Family betrayed me in court for my son's custody. Now they beg for help after my ex turned on them. I secretly recorded their confession. A mother's love is a force beyond measure, a boundless well of resilience that transforms even the most fragile into warriors. It was this very power that transformed Emma, a woman who had everything taken away, into a symbol of perseverance, courage, and determination. This is a story of betrayal, loss, and the eventual triumph that teaches us about love, betrayal, and what it means to truly fight for family. Emma had always been a person who believed in love and loyalty. At 25, she met James through a group of mutual friends, and after 2 years of dating, they decided to live together. However, James's family was traditional, the kind that held conservative values close to their heart. The idea of living together before marriage was an unacceptable stain upon their principles. And they made it clear, if Emma and James wanted to stay together, they had to marry. Emma had never wanted to marry under pressure, but she loved James and believed that he was worth making sacrifices for. So, she relented and accepted his family's conditions, becoming James's wife within a year of their decision. Her own family supported their union wholeheartedly, and Emma looked forward to a life filled with love and companionship. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Emma was ecstatic when she found out she was pregnant just a year after their marriage. James was happy, and for the first time, she felt like they were building the family of their dreams. However, soon after she announced her pregnancy, pressure began to mount. Her in-laws wanted her to quit her job, a promising career she had spent years building, to become a full-time mother. They insisted that the best way for her to fulfill her role was to focus solely on raising their child, without the distractions of work. At first, Emma resisted. She had ambitions beyond being a wife and mother. But when her own parents and even her older brother began pressuring her, repeating that same rhetoric, that it was her duty as a mother, she began to question herself. She looked at James, who assured her that he would support the family financially, that he would be the perfect provider, and she, in turn, could focus all her energy on raising their child. After many sleepless nights, with her family's voices in her ears and her love for James clouding her judgment, she gave in. She quit her job during her second trimester and threw herself into her new role. Life changed quickly after their child was born. Emma noticed the shift in James immediately, though she tried to deny it to herself at first. During her pregnancy, James had been loving and attentive, but now that their son was here, his demeanor began to change. He grew distant and irritable, and he spent more time at work than at home. When Emma tried to talk to him, he brushed her off, claiming exhaustion from his long hours. He only seemed happy when playing with their son, and Emma tried to convince herself that his moodiness was just due to the pressures of being the sole breadwinner. She didn't want to believe that the man she loved could have changed so much in such a short time. Things went on this way for 2 years. Emma poured all her energy into being a mother, while James seemed to withdraw further and further away from her. He began working late nights and weekends, and there was always an excuse as to why he couldn't spend time with her. He was always tired, always overworked, and never had time to talk. Emma's attempts to rekindle their romance were met with irritation, and soon she found herself questioning whether the man she had married still loved her. About a year ago, the doubts that had long plagued her turned into a reality she could no longer ignore. She had suspected something for a while: late-night phone calls, the way James had become overly protective of his devices, and the way he seemed to come alive only when he was out of the house. Emma's fears reached their boiling point when she saw James with one of his coworkers, a single mother he had invited to their son's birthday party. They seemed friendly, overly so, but James assured her that they were just friends, nothing more. Emma wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But her doubts grew until she decided to trust her instincts and confront her suspicions. That night, she decided to change into something more comfortable for the party. When she walked into their bedroom, she found James and that same coworker wrapped in a passionate embrace, sitting on their bed. In their home, it took her a few seconds to process what she was seeing. And even then, the shock was too great. She could barely remember how she reacted, except that she grabbed the woman's hair and dragged her out of the room, her heart pounding in her ears. She was in a haze of rage and betrayal, feeling all the sacrifices she made crashing down in an instant. The scene she caused at her son's birthday party was not her proudest moment. But it was real, raw, and honest, a mother and wife who had been stripped of her dignity and left with nothing but her anger. After that incident, Emma realized just how alone she really was. Instead of supporting her, her parents and brother told her she was overreacting and needed to apologize to James. They claimed she had made a fool of herself and their family by causing a scene. And the only way to make things right was to reconcile with her husband and patch things up with his family. Emma refused. She had spent years sacrificing for everyone around her, for her husband, for her in-laws, even for her own family. She wasn't about to bend again for people who didn't care about her happiness. She decided to file for divorce. But James wouldn't make things easy. He wanted full custody of their son. And he had both his wealthy parents and Emma's own family on his side. James's lawyer began to paint her as an unstable, irrational mother, using her breakdown at the birthday party as evidence that she was incapable of taking care of her son. It hurt Emma deeply to see her parents and brother testify against her, repeating the lies that James had fabricated about her. They accused her of being an alcoholic and having rage issues, none of which were true. They betrayed her for money, promising to side with James's wealthy family in exchange for financial support. Emma lost custody of her son. James and his parents gained full custody, and she was granted supervised visits, which James made sure were impossible for her to schedule. Emma tried to stay strong, but the thought of her son growing up without her, of him forgetting who she was, weighed heavily on her every day. She spent nights crying over the memories of holding her baby boy, wondering if she would ever get the chance to watch him grow up. Months later, Emma received an unexpected message from her brother. Her parents wanted to meet and talk. They claimed they had realized their mistake and wanted to make amends. Emma was skeptical but decided to meet them, hoping that perhaps this could be the opportunity she needed to get her son back. When she arrived at her parents' house, they began to beg for her forgiveness. They admitted that James had never paid them the money he had promised. And now they were struggling. They confessed that they had been manipulated into betraying her, that they had lied in court because they thought it would secure their future. They wanted her to forgive them, and they promised to help her win her custody case if she could pay them the money they were promised. Emma felt a mix of emotions, anger, pity, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. But she had come prepared. She had suspected that her family would try to manipulate her again. So she recorded the entire conversation. With this evidence, Emma went back to her lawyer. This time, she had the proof she needed to show that James and her family had lied in court. The custody battle was long and grueling, but Emma was determined. She fought with everything she had, knowing that she was fighting not just for herself, but for her son. Eventually, Emma won custody. James tried to fight the charges, but he was ultimately convicted of perjury. Along with Emma's family, her ex-husband fled the country, abandoning their son, and Emma was left to pick up the pieces. She focused on rebuilding her relationship with her son, who was confused and hurt by everything that had happened. She knew it would take time, but she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. Emma worked tirelessly to make a life for herself and her son. She found a job, though it didn't pay much, and decided to sell their house to move to a smaller apartment where they could start fresh. She began attending therapy sessions with her son, and slowly but surely, they began to rebuild their bond. She watched as her son went from a confused, scared little boy to a happy, confident child. He began to trust her again, and she knew that, despite everything, they would be okay. Years later, Emma looks back on her journey and realizes that everything she went through made her stronger. She learned that love is not about sacrifice, it's about support and respect. She learned that family is not defined by blood, but by the people who stand by you when the world turns against you. She learned that her worth was not tied to her ability to please others, but to her strength and resilience in the face of adversity. Emma's story is not just about betrayal and redemption. It's about growth and the power of a mother's love. Despite the pain and the losses, she came out on the other side stronger and more determined than ever. She built a new life for herself and her son, one that was built on truth, love, and the lessons learned from the past. Emma's story resonates with anyone who has ever felt alone, betrayed, or lost. It serves as a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow. It shows that even when those closest to you turn their backs, you have the power to stand up, fight, and reclaim your life. And in doing so, you may just find that the love you were looking for was within you all along. I couldn't give them grandchildren, so my parents convinced my husband to leave me. They were shocked when I had a baby girl 3 years later. In life, the road to happiness isn't always a straight path. Sometimes it winds through heartbreak, betrayal, and the kind of loss that seems unbearable. Our protagonist, Emily, experienced all of this firsthand. Her journey started not with a choice, but with a cruel twist of fate that changed everything she thought she knew about love, family, and herself. Emily had always been the type of person who worked hard to make others happy. Growing up, her parents made no secret of their preference for a son, and though they treated her well enough, she always felt that she needed to prove herself. When she met Scott, she thought she had finally found someone who loved her for who she was. Regardless of her parents' cold treatment, Scott was kind, attentive, and brought joy to Emily's life in a way that her own family never had. When Emily and Scott got married, it felt like the culmination of all her dreams. Her parents, who had previously been distant, suddenly seemed interested in her life again. They wanted to be involved in her wedding plans, showered Scott with praise, and even acted like a happy family for a change. It was everything Emily had ever wanted, or so she thought. But soon after their wedding, things began to change. Her parents started hinting about grandchildren, a desire that quickly grew into an obsession. They constantly pressured Emily to start a family, and when she and Scott decided to try for a baby, they were hopeful. However, months passed with no success. It was then that Emily's worst fears came true. She was diagnosed with infertility. The news was devastating, not just for Emily, but for Scott as well. What was even more painful, though, was the way her parents reacted. They were not supportive or understanding. Instead, they seemed to blame Emily for her inability to give them the grandchild they so desperately wanted. The distance that had once been between them returned, but this time it was accompanied by a coldness that was impossible to ignore. They stopped visiting, barely spoke to her, and made it clear that, in their eyes, she was a disappointment. Scott, too, began to change. At first, he was sympathetic, but slowly he became distant. He started spending more time away from home, and when he was home, it felt like he was a million miles away. Emily tried to save their marriage, but nothing worked. The final blow came when Scott came home one day with divorce papers. He said he couldn't continue living this way, and despite Emily's desperate attempts to convince him otherwise, he left. The divorce was brutal. Not only was Emily losing her husband, but she soon learned that Scott had moved in with her parents. It was as if the people she had loved most in her life had conspired against her. She later discovered that her parents had been influencing Scott for months, convincing him that he deserved better, that he deserved a family that Emily could not give him. They had always wanted a son, and now it seemed they had adopted Scott as a replacement for the child they never had. Devastated, Emily moved away from everything she had known. She left the city, cut ties with her parents, blocked Scott, and started over in the suburbs. She changed her appearance, found a new job, and tried to build a life where the pain of her past could no longer reach her. She focused on herself, on healing, and eventually, on the one dream that had never left her, becoming a mother. After saving for years, Emily decided to pursue IVF with an anonymous donor. It was a long, emotional journey, but after several attempts, she finally got pregnant. The day her daughter was born was the happiest day of her life. Holding her baby girl in her arms, Emily realized that despite everything she had been through, she had found her way to happiness. Emily thought she had left her past behind her, but life had other plans. One day, while walking in her neighborhood with her daughter, she saw them, her parents and Scott. They were visiting someone in her neighborhood, and when they saw her, they approached, acting as if nothing had happened. Scott even said he had been thinking about her, that he wanted to make things right. Her parents, too, acted like they wanted to be part of her life again, now that she had a child. But Emily was no longer the same person they had abandoned. She had grown stronger, learned to stand up for herself, and realized that her worth was not tied to her ability to have children or to make others happy. She told them exactly what she thought, that they had only come back because she had something they wanted, that they had never truly cared for her as a person, and that they had lost any right to be part of her life or her daughter's life. She walked away, leaving them standing in the street, shocked and speechless. Emily knew that she would never get the apology she deserved from her parents or from Scott. But she no longer needed it. She had built a life for herself and her daughter. A life filled with love, laughter, and the kind of happiness that no one could take away from her. She had learned the hard way that sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. But she had also learned that she was stronger than she ever knew. And that real happiness comes from within. Emily's story is a powerful reminder of the importance of self-worth and resilience. Sometimes, the people we love and trust can disappoint us in ways we never imagined. But that does not mean we are broken or unworthy. Emily's journey shows that it is possible to rebuild, to find happiness even after the deepest betrayal, and to create a life that is truly your own. In the middle of her story, Emily faced many moments of doubt. She wondered if she was to blame for her infertility, if she was truly the worthless person her parents made her feel like. It's easy to internalize the negativity of others, especially when it comes from those who are supposed to love us unconditionally. But the truth is that our worth is not defined by others' expectations or disappointments. Emily also teaches us about the value of boundaries. She made the difficult decision to cut her parents and Scott out of her life, knowing that they were toxic influences. This decision wasn't easy. She wanted their love and acceptance for so long, but it was necessary for her own mental health and for the well-being of her daughter. Setting boundaries is not about being cruel. It's about protecting yourself from those who do not have your best interests at heart. The story also highlights the strength it takes to start over. Moving to a new place, changing her appearance, starting a new job. All of these were part of Emily's journey to healing. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is to leave everything behind and start fresh. It's not about running away from problems, but about creating the space you need to grow and heal. Emily's decision to become a mother on her own terms is another important lesson. She did not let her infertility or her lack of a partner stop her from pursuing her dream. She found a way to make it happen, and in doing so, she proved that there is no one right way to build a family. The love she has for her daughter is not any less valid because she chose IVF or because she is a single mother. Love is love, and family is what you make of it. Finally, Emily's story is about redemption, not in the traditional sense, but in the way she redeemed her own life. She took control of her narrative, refused to let her past define her, and created a future full of love and joy. She showed that even when others fail us, we have the power to lift ourselves up, to find happiness, and to thrive. For anyone who has ever felt let down by those they love, Emily's journey is a testament to the fact that you can survive, heal, and find your own path to joy. Life may not always go the way we plan, and the people we count on may let us down, but that does not mean we can't find happiness. Sometimes, the unexpected path is the one that leads us to where we were always meant to be.